97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with 97.3 ESPN.com's Andrew DiCecco. Powered by InsideTheBirds.com.
He's in! Touchdown!
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
All right, plenty of NFL to get into. Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Check out the Inside the Birds podcast. I'm Andrew DiCecco from 97.3 ESPN.com. A lot going on today, specifically with the Eagles and Desean Jackson. We'll get into that. And, Jackson posted a video apology today about his post from last night, which basically posted a fake Hitler quote on Instagram. We got that and more right now with Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Andrew, what's happening, man?
Mike, I'm doing well. How are you? And Hunter, I haven't talked to you in a while, so again, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Well, let's get into what is a very interesting and tough topic today. Desean Jackson last night really flipped the social media world upside down. He faces backlash for the posting of anti-Semitic messages. And I don't know, the Eagles put out a statement. Then he has put out his own apology. Let's get your initial reaction on his initial post and take us to the timeline of where we are now.
So, even during, unprecedented times, there hasn't been really a shortage of NFL talking points. But, I found Desean Jackson's post obviously was extremely inappropriate, inexcusable, and insensitive. But I felt that it came from a lack of understanding rather than a place of hate. When you look at some of his comments that said, it was never intended to put down any race or religion. And when I posted what I posted, I didn't mean for it to the extent you guys took it. Okay, well, how exactly did you mean for those comments to be taken? And what exactly were you trying to get across here? If that wasn't your intent. And then when you see his apology, the further lack of understanding and the magnitude of what his words meant kind of really were evident there when he made his apology earlier today.
So apparently Miles Sanders working out with Desean Jackson in Tampa as Desean Jackson apologizing for this Hitler quote. John Clark tweeted about an hour ago, said that he is told that Desean has spoken with Howie Roseman a lot today and will be speaking with Jeff Lurie, which Adam Kaplan from InsideTheBirds.com responded. They've had conversations with him and his agent several times about the situation. This is just the beginning. It's not going away. So with that, the statement that the Eagles put out, did you get any messages from that? Could you read the tea leaves at all?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that actually really stuck out was when they said we are continuing to evaluate the circumstances and will take appropriate action. When you look, on the surface, it made it seem like, they're going to continue to work with Desean and really work with him to get a finer understanding of what his words really meant and, kind of coach him on that. But then when you read that fine print there, you realize, this might not necessarily be over and there may be, repercussions that follow from here. And then you kind of see what Adam put out and John Clark put out, like you were alluding to. And, this could be far from over. You kind of saw something, and the last time we saw something like this was in 2013 when you saw the Riley Cooper fiasco, of course, in the summer of 2013 when something that Jeff Mosher covered extremely well when he was with Comcast Sportsnet. Obviously this is a different regime. So the circumstances are are a lot different. So it's hard to kind of compare the two, but like I said, this is far from over.
Adam Schefter tweeted out that the Eagles' decision on whether to keep Desean Jackson could come down to whether Post is a default under his contract. And then he goes on to say that Jackson is guaranteed $4.8 million this year in salary and already received a $2 million option bonus. Do you think that the finances come into play on their decision?
I think it could, Hunter, but I think that they don't want to necessarily blur those lines. They want to do what's right, and if they feel that Desean has really shown a firm grasp of what his words meant, and kind of taken the steps to kind of have a better understanding of what aware, of what, what he posted and take the steps to kind of correct that. I think that might weigh. I mean, I think if I remember correctly, in 2013, I think Riley Cooper underwent sensitivity training and was suspended. You might see a substantial fine for Desean, possibly a suspension. It's hard to speculate right now, but those are some things that I would think would be more at the forefront, less than releasing him altogether.
Do we not? He did his own video with an apology. Did you feel that he was sincere in that apology, and was that enough to say, all right, he understood what he did, he's taking some responsibility for him, and that would suffice?
Well, it was kind of an odd and awkward apology, because there were some things that came out in that, like I said, it was never intended to put down any race or religion. And when I posted what I posted, I didn't mean for it to the extent that you guys took it. Now, that to me shows a complete lack of understanding of what his words meant, and the heaviness that it impacts a lot. It impacted a lot of people. So I don't necessarily know that he fully grasped what he said yet. And sometimes PR teams put stuff out there, that seemed like that was from Desean. But like I said, I don't think it came from a place of hate. I think it came from lack of understanding, and that's kind of what I took from his apology.
Obviously, there are people who will look at the Riley Cooper situation and kind of tie it in here. Do you see any parallels to that and this situation? Jeff Lurie was the owner then. I know it was different regimes, but Jeff Lurie was the owner. Howie Roseman was the GM. They are both still here.
Yeah, both situations were extremes. They were inappropriate and both inexcusable. You could see, because Desean's never had anything like this similar to Riley. They've both been known as team guys. Riley was known as a team guy. I think that could also come into play. Desean's never really had anything come up like this in his career, and he's kind of beloved by his teammates. By all accounts, he's a good locker room guy. So I think in the past, if Jeff would know better than I covering it, back then. But I believe that it was Michael Vick that spoke up on behalf of Riley Cooper and held a team meeting, and that's probably what saved him from getting the axe there. And but Desean is so beloved by his teammates, and this is such a it kind of randomly occurred. There hasn't been any kind of off the field issues with Desean, really, in this regard. So I think that, they could possibly handle it the same way. It is the same ownership, different head coach though. So it's kind of interesting to see how it's going to play out. Obviously this is far from over.
How much of the debate on cutting him has to do with his skill level? If this is an undrafted wide receiver compared to arguably the most important guy on the offense outside of Wentz.
I mean, that's always going to be, in the back of everyone's mind. Will they part with him because he's such a key factor in the offense? And I think as an owner, that's always going to be something that weighs heavily on when you're making these type of decisions. But I think ultimately, what the Eagles have shown over the course of in recent years is that they're going to do what's right, or what they feel is right. Every circumstance is unique. And like I said, I think the fact that Desean has never done anything like this before, and he's been widely regarded as a locker room guy, and you saw him kind of band together in the last month when he saw what Carson Wentz and Zach Ertz have said, stepping up there. I think that kind of all plays into the outcome of what happens here.
Obviously, Jackson has had some issues in the past. He got cut the first time. Now, from what we recall, he got cut. Chip Kelly insinuated that he had gang ties. And then when they signed him back, it was almost like Roseman kind of took a shot at Chip, saying that, that was all ridiculous. And so it seems that Roseman and Jackson at least have some sort of relationship. Do you garner that as well?
Yeah, Mike, that's exactly kind of how I took that as well. The whole Chip Kelly regime and Howie Roseman, there was always that disconnect there. One was on one page, one was on another page, and you kind of saw that reflected by their actions, at post Chip Kelly. And I think that when you see, they were quick to bring Jackson back into the fold. You see the rapport with Desean and Howie Roseman. I do think that plays into account, because what Chip Kelly said and saw is different from the way that Jackson is perceived around the NFL. So, and I do think that that's going to play into it.
Do you think that the league could step in and actually give him a suspension where he's going to miss some time with the Eagles if they do stay with him?
I think the Eagles would before the league would. I think the Eagles would step in there and hand out the suspension if there was one. And I think there will be, Hunter. I think that would be that's to be expected. I think you'll see a fine and possibly a suspension. I don't think that cutting him would be. I think that might be an extreme measure given his prior. Just given his overall body of work over his career and the type of guy he is in the locker room.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that you would think anyway that there would be some action, but let me ask you this. Mm-hmm. Is it – I feel like the Eagles are going to and should take some strong action here, but does that include just flat-out cutting him?
I agree with you, Mike. I think that there needs to be a strong, significant stance here on Jackson and the comments that he had last night. But I don't. I think that cutting him will certainly be in the discussion. But if it were me, when you take everything into account, and you really need to. No one really knows Desean like Doug Peterson, like Howie Roseman, like Jeffrey Lurie, and that locker room. So it's really hard to say. But based on an outsider's perspective. I think just the kind of guy that he comes off as, the kind of teammate that he comes off as, I think cutting him would be relatively harsh in this circumstance. I mean, if you remember when Riley Cooper's situation, I believe it was in 2014, he got a 5-year extension, $22.5 million. So, and he, aside from, I believe he was suspended and, like I said, had to undergo that sensitivity training. I don't believe that there was anything else handed down for him. So you might see something, that kind of patterns that.
Let me ask you this. I know there's no really way of understanding this or knowing this, but there have been people out there that are claiming, he just might be ignorant to what he did. Is that a viable excuse or reason?
It is, Mike, and that's exactly the way that I perceived it. He just, it was just, ignorance, lack of understanding, and putting something out there without really, grasping the magnitude of the words that he said. And I think that sometimes, not just athletes, but we as people, we put stuff out there on social media sometimes without really, without giving it a second thought of how it's going to be taken by everybody. And I think that's kind of what Desean did there. I guess he said that somebody sent that to him and he reposted it, put it out there. But I mean, you really, if you're not privy on a certain subject, certainly something as significant as that, you shouldn't speak on that. And and someone like Desean, given in his position, should know better than that.
What you say to the people who feel like double standard here? If this was a white guy who said this about that guy would be cut immediately.
Well, I would point to, just like we said, the recent history with the Eagles. Riley Cooper wasn't released for that, so it's kind of hard to say that there's a double standard as far as the Eagles are concerned.
Okay.
So I mean, that's all we really have to base that off of there, and they handled the Riley Cooper thing internally, and that's kind of the way that's all we really have to go off of. So that's kind of how I anticipate them handling the Desean situation.
I think it's important to recognize that Lurie and Roseman, they're part of the community that he hurt with his words. So to help him grow and learn and understand, it's valuable compared to saying, hey, let's get rid of Desean Jackson, and then another team will just pick him up. Like, part of this is you got to teach someone who's uneducated and teach him why it's wrong that what you did. I think that is more important than, say, just getting rid of him. And Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman being a part of that community, it adds to this whole thing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Don't just part with the player. Let him understand. Let him know the errors of his ways. Teach him about his mistakes and kind of help him. Help him learn. Essentially, like I said, I don't believe that came from a place of hate. I think that came from just not knowing, just ignorance, overall ignorance, and getting rid of the issue without kind of helping Desean have a better understanding of what he said.
Yeah.
I think that really, I think that would be more beneficial, Hunter. I agree with you.
Andrew DiCecco, Football for powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Of course, at DiCecco NFL on Twitter. You can get more on this story on our website, 973ESPN.com. I do want to get some thoughts from you. There has been some other NFL news, some pretty big NFL news. The Desean Jackson stuff, I think, will be a fluid situation. Adam Schefter reporting the Eagles' decision. And by the way, on this, Schefter reported the decision to keep Jackson could come down to the if there's anything in his contract that kind of have something about disparaging thoughts, because the Eagles, he is guaranteed $4.8 million in salary. He already collected $2 million. So the Eagles could try to get that guaranteed money back, and I guess at that point they could make a decision to cut him if it financially didn't hurt them. But it seems that it wouldn't be till next year. Now, he signed through next year, but they can then cut him at the end of this year.
Yeah, right. The Eagles could cut him at the end of this year, and like I said, that's cutting him this season will be in, that's going to be one of the things that are on the table there. But kind of like I believe Hunter outlined that earlier with the Schefter tweet, and that's something that I think that while I think that they're going to consider that heavily, I think that it would be more beneficial to Desean to have someone like Jeffrey Lurie or Howie Roseman really put him through and educating him on what he put out there and kind of helping him learn the error of his ways. I think that would be more beneficial.
And that sounds like what's happening. It sounds like him and Roseman have talked. Lurie's going to talk to him. But I definitely think before he ever puts an Eagles jersey on, he's going to have to show way more remorse than he did in that apology. And hopefully he will. And I hope the Eagles certainly explain to him why he needs to, and I think that that would take a big step. I want to ask you about Pat Mahomes. It started out as a 10-year deal in the $300+ million range. Then it was $450. It has gone all the way up to $503 million with $477 million in guaranteed mechanisms, whatever the heck that means. But wow, I don't even know where to start. 10 years, $503 million for Patrick Mahomes. I mean, no one's worth that kind of money, but who wins this deal? Him, the Chiefs? I mean, did the Chiefs get a bargain?
Well, I want to put that number into perspective here. That's double. I read something that said that that's double what Eli Manning yielded in his career earnings, which was $252 million over 16 years. I can't fathom that number. But then when you look at what Pat Mahomes did in his 3 seasons, he's a Super Bowl champion, NFL MVP, Super Bowl MVP, Offensive Player of the Year in 2018, 2-time Pro Bowler, first team All-Pro, 76 touchdowns and 18 interceptions and 9,412 yards passing. It's at 24 years old, when you look and see, if he continues his upward trajectory over the 12 years of that contract, that contract's going to prove to be a bargain for the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, he has Travis Kelce's in the fold through 2021. Tyreek Hill signed a 3-year extension last season. They added Lucas Niang, the left tackle from TCU, in the draft. I still think that they need to add some more pieces on the offensive line to kind of protect their investment there. But if they continue to build around Patrick and give him the weapons that he needs, they could be a potential dynasty here in the coming years.
A lot of people are comparing Pat Mahomes' contract to say what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson and what's going to happen with Dak Prescott. But what about Carson Wentz? Does this make Howie's contract with Wentz look better, or does it not really have any sort of impact on that?
Well, I think when you're speaking of a contract of that magnitude with Patrick Mahomes, I think any contract's going to look insignificant to that. But I mean, I do on another note, I do feel like Carson Wentz, like he was fairly compensated with this contract there. But Patrick Mahomes is, I believe it was it was up there in guarantees with the Mike Trouts of the world. I think Mike Trouts had a little bit more guaranteed money. So they made a significant investment in him, but they also set themselves up where they can move some money around over the years here.
Yeah, he's turning 25 in September. So at the end of this deal, he's only going to be 35 years old, which means, he could be in line for another deal.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, if he continues his momentum forward, which he's really, given us no indication to think that he won't. And if he sticks with Andy Reid for a while, the Chiefs could be, they could have something special there and build something of a dynasty. And that's going to turn out to be, I think that's a very favorable deal actually for both teams when you really look into it.
Let's get your quick take then on training camp. There's some reports it could go down to 80 men. How does that affect, the Eagles and the possibility of having no preseason games and how that could affect some of the younger players?
Well, I've always been of the belief that training camp is more so for younger players than it is for veteran players. That's where you find your Corey Clements. You look over the past handful of years when I've been covering the NFL, and I've been able to unearth a player like Marcus Johnson. It was my first interview ever. He made the roster in 2017, ended up being included in the Michael Bennett trade, of course. He started 6 games for the Colts last year. Rashard Davis is another guy. He got a Super Bowl ring. He was returning punts for the Titans in the playoffs against the Patriots. Greg Ward's a player I've written about every year since 2017. And I've gotten a little bit of backlash from fans, every year that he gets released. And, I've been told that he was not an NFL player, but I trusted my eyes and I knew that he had NFL ability. And you saw what he did last year. Chandon Sullivan's another player. He allowed 11 completions on 31 targets. He was the 4th highest rated cornerback, defensive player actually, on the Green Bay roster. These are guys that you would never have heard of if they didn't get their opportunities to prove themselves in the preseason. You get, as a younger player, as an undrafted player or a late round pick, you don't really get these. You get very minimal opportunities in practice. You might get a handful of reps a day, and you need to be almost perfect in those reps to really catch the eye of the coaching staff. And now you're going to see guys that are on the back end of the roster, like a Deontay Burnett, like a Joe Osman, like a Casey Tuhill, like a Manasseh Bailey who can flat out fly, like a Graylin Arnold, who I've written about for the site, who had 6 interceptions and a sack last season at Baylor. These guys might be on the outside looking in. What do you do with players like that? If they move down from 90 to 75 or 80, do you say, listen, we're going to put you on standby, we're going to put you in a Philadelphia hotel, and should there be injuries or God forbid a COVID outbreak, we're going to bring you back in, or what do you do?
Yeah, as you've kind of chronicled some of these younger players and then I almost feel like you're penalizing the team. Like, we went out and found these guys, and now we don't even get the opportunity to kind of, take a look at them.
Yeah, exactly. And something that crossed my mind is, okay, let's say you part with a like a Casey Tuhill who you invest a 7th round pick in. Well, if he passed, I assume he has to pass through waivers. So what happens if another team likes him and goes and claims him off waivers, and now he's on their 75-man roster? So you lose a draft pick and a player that you maybe want to keep on standby and bring him back into the fold. It's just after you saw how training camp was kind of unfolding.
Yeah,
you could lose some of these guys, and like you said, every player on that roster is brought in there for a reason, for competition purposes, to get a longer look, or just to give the defense a better look, whether it's speed or whatever it is. So they're there for a reason, and you're going to be deprived of NFL teams in general, not just the Eagles. We're going to be deprived of 10 to 15 guys. I'm strongly against that.
How much not having the 4 that hasn't been official yet, but they were going down to 2 anyway, and it's being recommended that they get rid of all 4. The veterans don't care; they don't really need it, but those younger players really, they're not having those opportunities, like the whole Andre Dillard situation. I'm sure the Eagles want to see Dillard play a couple of series at least in preseason.
Yeah, exactly. I've always felt that 4 preseason games are a little bit, that's a little bit overkill. I think if they cut it down to 2 games, and you don't really need to see the veterans, keep the veterans out of that. You see that all around the league. I believe it was the Rams don't play any of their veterans last season. I believe Adam Kaplan said. So I think that when you look at what the preseason entails, yeah, it means everything to a player like an Andre Dillard, to a Joe Osman, to a Raekwon Williams, and those 4th preseason games, some of those guys never put pads or helmet on ever again. So that is their Super Bowl, and some of those guys are their jobs for the 2020 season would come down to that last game.
Yeah.
So it's very pivotal.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, and of course, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Much more on our website on Desean Jackson. Check that out. And Andrew DiCecco's back on Friday. We'll have more from Jeff Mosher on this tomorrow, Adam Kaplan on Thursday, and follow him at DiCecco NFL on Twitter. All right, man, great job.
You got it, guys. Take care.
All right, he, like August, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline as he pointed out a lot of key things